To our amazing viewers at Cheating Tales Lab, we'd love to hear, which part of the world are you joining us from? Let us know. Now, let's dive into today's story. Chapter 1. The Perfect Illusion. Jared Pena had built his life on discipline and precision. 12 years in the Marines had taught him to read situations, assess threats, and act decisively. But nothing in his training prepared him for the moment his 9-year-old daughter Emma walked through the door that Tuesday evening, her small hands trembling as she clutched her backpack. "Dad," her voice cracked. "Can we talk? Just us." Jared was in the kitchen, preparing dinner while his wife Gina was supposedly resting upstairs. "Another migraine," she'd said. These episodes had become increasingly frequent over the past 6 months, along with mysterious bruises she claimed came from clumsiness, and bouts of dizziness that sent her to the emergency room at least twice a month. "Of course, Princess." Jared wiped his hands on a towel, noting the unusual paleness in Emma's face. "What's wrong?" Emma glanced toward the stairs, then pulled him into the garage, closing the door behind them. Her eyes were red-rimmed, and Jared felt his chest tighten. In his years of service, he'd faced enemy fire without flinching, but seeing his daughter in distress activated every protective instinct he possessed. "Dad, promise you won't be sad," she whispered. "Emma, you're scaring me." "What happened?" She reached in her backpack with shaking hands and pulled out a manila envelope, folded several times. "My friend Sophie. Her mom is Dr. Fitzgerald. She works at County General." Emma's voice dropped even lower. "She saw Mommy at the hospital yesterday," she said. Emma's eyes filled with tears. "She said I needed to give this to you. She said to tell you. Be smart, be careful, and don't tell anything to Mommy." Jared's mind raced as he took the envelope. Dr. Linda Fitzgerald, he knew the name. She was Sophie's mother, a respected emergency room physician with a sterling reputation. Why would she pass confidential medical information through a 9-year-old? Because it was the only way to reach me, he realized. Gina monitored his phone, his email, even his conversations. He'd noticed it gradually. The way she'd ask who he'd been talking to, the casual way she'd check his phone while he showered, her insistence that she handle all their mail. With Emma watching anxiously, Jared opened the envelope. Inside were photocopied medical records, handwritten notes, and several photographs. As he read, his blood ran cold. The first document was a medical report from 3 weeks ago. Gina had been treated for injuries consistent with domestic violence, bruises on her arms, a split lip, claims of being pushed down the stairs. The examining physician's name made Jared's jaw clench. Dr. Alfonso Monroe. "No," Jared breathed. He'd never laid a hand on Gina. Never. The very thought made him sick. But there was more. Page after page of emergency room visits over the past 6 months, each time treated by Dr. Monroe, each time with Gina reporting new injuries, new symptoms, building a documented pattern of abuse. There were photographs of bruises, x-rays showing old fractures, psychiatric evaluations claiming Jared exhibited violent tendencies and unstable behavior. It was all fabricated. It had to be. Jared had been with Emma during half these supposed incidents. He had alibis, witnesses, but he realized with growing horror that didn't matter. This was a paper trail, carefully constructed, thoroughly documented, and utterly damning. The final document was a handwritten note from Dr. Fitzgerald. "Mr. Pena, I stumbled upon your wife's file accidentally when cross-referencing patient records. Dr. Alfonso Monroe is my colleague, and I've suspected him of unethical behavior for some time. These injuries are self-inflicted. I have evidence. She's been to the hospital 14 times in 6 months, always requesting him specifically, always when you're at work. I reviewed security footage that shows her arriving without injuries and leaving with bandages. There's more, insurance fraud, falsified reports, and I believe she's building a case against you. Monroe is involved romantically. I couldn't reach you directly without alerting them. Trust no one at County General except me. Your daughter knows how to reach me through Sophie. Be smart. They're planning something soon." Jared's hands had gone numb. He looked at Emma, whose tears were now flowing freely. "Sophie's mom said Mommy is lying," Emma sobbed. "She said Mommy is trying to hurt you. Dad, I'm scared." Jared pulled his daughter into his arms, his mind working with military precision despite the rage building in his chest. Gina, his wife of 10 years, the woman he'd trusted with everything. She was setting him up for something, probably a restraining order, Maybe criminal charges. Definitely a divorce where she'd claim abuse and take everything, including Emma. And Dr. Alfonso Monroe. Jared didn't know the man personally, but he'd heard Gina mention him casually over the past year. Such a caring doctor, so thorough, really listens to my concerns. Of course, he wasn't just helping her. He was complicit, romantically involved, Dr. Fitzgerald had said. Emma, listen to me. Jared held his daughter's face gently. Everything is going to be okay, but I need you to be brave. Can you do that? Emma nodded, wiping her eyes. Good girl. Now, here's what we're going to do. You're going to go upstairs, do your homework like normal. If Mom asks about today, tell her it was regular. Nothing special. Can you do that? Yes, Daddy. That's my strong girl. Jared kissed her forehead. And Emma, I need you to know, I would never, ever hurt your mother. Or you. Or anyone in this family. What Dr. Fitzgerald told you is true. Mom is making up stories. But we're going to fix this. I promise. After Emma went inside, Jared stood in the garage, the documents clutched in his hands. His breathing was controlled, measured. In combat, panic got you killed. He needed to think, to plan. Gina had made one critical mistake. She'd underestimated him. She thought he was the doting husband, too trusting, too devoted to see what was happening under his own roof. She'd counted on his love making him blind. But Jared Pena hadn't survived 3 tours in hostile territory by being naive. He'd survived by being smarter, faster, and more ruthless than his enemies. And now Gina had made herself his enemy. He pulled out his phone, then hesitated. Was it compromised? Probably. Gina had insisted on being on his family plan, had helped him set up his cloud backups. He needed to assume everything. His phone, computer, home security system was potentially monitored. Fine. He'd work around it. Jared walked back into the house, his expression carefully neutral. Gina was in the kitchen now, having come downstairs, wearing her bathrobe and looking pale and fragile. Hey, honey, she said softly, touching her temple. Sorry about dinner. The migraine was really bad today. No problem. Jared smiled, kissing her cheek, fighting the revulsion that now churned in his gut. I've got it covered. Why don't you rest? You're so good to me, Gina said, her eyes meeting his with what looked like genuine affection. I don't know what I'd do without you. Jared watched her walk away, marveling at her performance. This woman, who'd shared his bed for a decade, who'd given birth to their daughter, was plotting his destruction with cold calculation. As he finished preparing dinner, Jared's mind was already working through his strategy. He needed more information. He needed to understand the full scope of the conspiracy. He needed to know what they were planning and when. And then he needed to destroy them both so completely that they'd never threaten his family again. That night, after Emma was asleep and Gina had taken her usual cocktail of pills that kept her knocked out until morning, Jared sat in his home office, a room Gina rarely entered. He'd done a sweep earlier. No hidden cameras, no recording devices. His years in intelligence had taught him how to check. He opened his laptop, but instead of logging into his regular accounts, he pulled up a secure browser he'd hidden in his system files. Old habits died hard. Even in civilian life, Jared had maintained certain precautions, certain skills. He'd thought it was paranoia. Now he knew it was preparation. He began his research, starting with Dr. Alfonso Monroe. 42 years old, successful cosmetic surgeon with privileges at County General. Divorced 3 years ago under acrimonious circumstances. His ex-wife had claimed infidelity. 2 formal complaints filed with the medical board, both dismissed for lack of evidence. A civil suit from a patient that was settled out of court. Not clean, Jared thought. Monroe had a history of boundary violations. He dug deeper, using resources most civilians didn't know existed. Military connections, intelligence databases he technically shouldn't still have access to, but did. Within an hour, Jared had built a preliminary profile on Dr. Alfonso Monroe. Ambitious, narcissistic, with a pattern of relationships with vulnerable women. He'd been investigated twice for insurance fraud, but never charged. Next, Jared examined Gina's recent behavior through a new lens. The constant doctor visits. The mysterious ailments. The way she'd grown distant, secretive. He'd attributed it to stress, to health issues, to the normal ebbs and flows of marriage. He'd been an idiot. No, he'd been trusting. There was a difference. But trust was a weapon, and Gina had wielded it against him with expert precision. Jared pulled up their bank statements, investment accounts, credit cards. Everything looked normal, but he noticed something odd. Gina had opened a separate credit card 6 months ago, for emergencies, she'd said. The statements showed regular charges at hotels in the city, expensive restaurants, jewelry stores. She was spending money on Alfonso, preparing for a new life with him, all while building a false narrative that would let her leave Jared with Emma, the house, and probably a substantial portion of his military pension. A message notification popped up on his screen, an encrypted email to an address he'd set up years ago and forgotten about. It was from Dr. Linda Fitzgerald. "Mr. Pena, I assume you received the documents. I couldn't say everything in the note. Alfonso Monroe is dangerous. He's done this before, helped women fake domestic violence to escape marriages, but really he's grooming them, taking their assets, then discarding them. His ex-wife tried to warn me before she left town. Your wife is the third woman I know of. The others ended badly. One is in a psychiatric facility. Another disappeared. I have more evidence, but I can't turn it over without proper channels, and Monroe has connections in the police department. I'm risking my career telling you this, but your daughter is my daughter's best friend. I couldn't stand by. Be careful. Monroe knows how to work the system. If you confront them directly, you'll lose. You need to be smarter. LF." Jared read the message 3 times, committing every word to memory before deleting it. Dr. Fitzgerald had given him a gift, information, warning, and most critically, an ally. But she was right. Confronting them directly would be suicide. Gina and Alfonso had spent months building their case. They had documentation, medical records, a narrative that would hold up in any court. If Jared went to the police with accusations, they'd see a dangerous veteran making threats against his abused wife and her doctor. They'd probably arrest him on the spot, and Gina would get exactly what she wanted: him out of the picture, a restraining order, and full custody of Emma. No, Jared needed to be patient. He needed to gather his own evidence, build his own case, and when the time came, strike so decisively that Gina and Alfonso would never see it coming. He pulled out a notebook, paper, not digital, and began to plan. First, documentation. He needed to prove the abuse allegations were false. Security footage, alibis, witnesses for every date Gina claimed injury. Second, expose the affair. Photographs, communications, proof that Gina and Alfonso were involved romantically, which would discredit their professional relationship and suggest conspiracy. Third, build his own counter-narrative. Show that Gina was mentally unstable, that she'd been manipulated by Monroe, that he was the victim, not the perpetrator. But those were defensive measures. Jared wasn't interested in just protecting himself. These two had threatened his daughter, his life, everything he'd built. They'd done it with calculation and cruelty. They deserved more than exposure. They deserved ruin. As dawn broke, Jared closed his notebook, his plan taking shape. It would take time, weeks, maybe months. It would require precision, patience, and a willingness to do things that existed in moral gray areas. But Jared Pena had spent his career in those gray areas. He knew how to operate in the dark. He knew how to hunt. And now he had prey. Chapter 2. The Hunter's Patience. The next morning, Jared maintained his routine with practiced ease. He made breakfast, drove Emma to school, kissed Gina goodbye as she left for what she claimed was a yoga class. Her instructor's name was Alfonso, Jared thought darkly, but his expression remained pleasant and supportive. "Have a good session," he said, waving as she drove away. The moment her car disappeared around the corner, Jared activated the tracker he'd installed under her bumper at 5 a.m. that morning. It was a military-grade GPS unit, the kind used for surveillance operations, impossible to detect without specialized equipment. Her phone's location would tell one story. This device would tell him the truth. He watched on his tablet as Gina's car headed not toward the gym, but toward the upscale Riverside district. She parked at the Belmont Hotel. Of course she did. Jared took screenshots, time-stamped and geotagged. While Gina was occupied, Jared had work to do. His first stop was County General Hospital. He wasn't going inside, not yet. Instead, he positioned himself in the parking garage with a high-quality camera equipped with a telephoto lens. At 11:30 a.m., Alfonso Monroe emerged from the hospital's staff entrance, glancing around before jogging to his Mercedes. He drove to the Belmont Hotel. Jared followed at a careful distance, documenting everything. Alfonso entered through the lobby. 40 minutes later, Gina emerged alone, her hair slightly disheveled, looking satisfied. Alfonso left 20 minutes after that, straightening his tie. It was almost insultingly sloppy. They felt safe, Jared realized. They thought they'd covered their tracks. The arrogance would be their downfall. By the time Gina returned home at 2 p.m., freshly showered and carrying a yoga mat she'd probably bought just for show, Jared was back home, working in his office, looking like he'd been there all day. "How was yoga?" he asked innocently. "Exhausting," Gina said, smiling. "But I feel so much better. I think the exercise is really helping with my stress." "That's great, honey." Jared hugged her, his hands gentle, his face loving, while inside he cataloged every lie, every betrayal. "I'm proud of you for taking care of yourself." Over the next 2 weeks, Jared built his case with methodical precision. He documented 17 separate meetings between Gina and Alfonso. He hired a private investigator, not a local one, but a former military intelligence colleague named Sergio Pratt who owed him a favor. Sergio was discreet, thorough, and had no connections to anyone in their city. "This is brutal, brother," Sergio told him during one of their secure phone calls. "She's really going for the throat." "What have you found?" "Bank records show Monroe's been paying for everything. Hotels, dinners, gifts. But here's the interesting part. Your wife opened a LLC 2 months ago. She's been transferring money from your joint accounts into it. Small amounts that wouldn't trigger alerts. About $45,000 so far." Jared's jaw clenched. "She's building a nest egg. Gets worse. I pulled Monroe's financial records. Don't ask how. He's deep in debt. Medical malpractice insurance premiums through the roof because of past complaints, expensive divorce settlement, gambling problem. Your wife isn't his lover, man. She's his mark. I think he's planning to take her money and run, probably after helping her frame you. So she's being used." "Yup. And she has no idea. Monroe's done this before. 3 years ago, similar situation in Nevada. Woman claimed domestic abuse. Monroe was her doctor. They had an affair. She divorced her husband, got a big settlement. Then Monroe cleaned out her accounts and disappeared. She tried to sue, but he'd covered his tracks. She ended up broke and broken." Jared absorbed this information, recalculating. Gina wasn't just a conspirator. She was also a victim of Alfonso's manipulation, if not her own greed. It didn't excuse her actions, but it changed the dynamics of his revenge. "What about the medical records?" Jared asked. "Can we prove they're falsified?" Dr. Fitzgerald came through. She did some digging, off the books, very risky for her. She found security footage from the hospital showing your wife arriving without injuries 3 different times, then leaving with bandages and limps. She also found the original intake forms before Monroe corrected them. The injuries are self-inflicted, staged, or completely fabricated. I've got copies of everything. "Sergio, this could get you. I know what it could get me. But you saved my life in Fallujah. I don't forget. Besides this Monroe guy, he needs to be stopped. He's a predator in a white coat." After hanging up, Jared reviewed the evidence. It was substantial but not yet definitive. He needed more, something that would not only clear his name, but destroy Alfonso Monroe's career and reputation permanently. The opportunity came from an unexpected source, Emma. One evening, while helping her with homework, Emma said quietly, "Dad, Sophie told me something weird." "What's that, princess?" She said her mom told her that Dr. Monroe got in trouble a long time ago. Something about hurting people on purpose during surgeries to make them come back more. Jared's attention sharpened. Did Sophie say anything else? Just that her mom was trying to prove it. But it was hard because Dr. Monroe is really smart about hiding things. Medical malpractice. Intentional harm. If Linda Fitzgerald was investigating Alfonso for that, it meant there might be other victims, other evidence Jared could use. He reached out to Dr. Fitzgerald through Sophie's school, leaving a note in Emma's backpack for Sophie to give to her mother. Paranoid, perhaps, but Jared trusted nothing to digital communication anymore. 2 days later, he received a response. "Meet me at Jefferson Park. Saturday, 10 a.m. Come alone. Bring your daughter. It'll look like a play date." That Saturday, Jared and Emma met Dr. Fitzgerald and Sophie at the park. The girls ran off to play while the adults sat on a bench, watching them. Linda Fitzgerald was in her mid-40s, with sharp eyes and an air of competence. She looked tired, like someone carrying a heavy burden. I shouldn't be doing this, she said without preamble. But I can't watch another family get destroyed by that man. Tell me about the malpractice, Jared said. Linda's expression darkened. Alfonso Monroe is brilliant. That's what makes him dangerous. He knows exactly how to walk the line between unethical and illegal. I've been tracking patient outcomes for 2 years, ever since a patient of mine mentioned strange complications after a routine cosmetic procedure Monroe performed. I started seeing patterns. Infections that shouldn't happen with proper sterile technique, nerve damage in areas he shouldn't have been working near, surgical errors that seemed almost deliberate. Why would a doctor intentionally harm patients? Money, follow-up visits, corrective procedures, additional treatments. He makes patients dependent on him. Plus, some of the patients he targets are wealthy, vulnerable women going through divorces or life transitions. He positions himself as their savior, then exploits them financially and emotionally. Like Gina. Yes. Linda met his eyes. I'm sorry, Mr. Pena. Your wife isn't the first, and if we don't stop him, she won't be the last. But here's what you need to understand. Alfonso is connected. He has friends in the police department, the DA's office, the hospital administration. When I tried to file formal complaints, they disappeared. Evidence I'd collected went missing from locked cabinets. I've been warned to drop it. But you haven't. I'm a doctor. I took an oath to do no harm. Alfonso Monroe violates that oath every day. But I can't bring him down alone. I don't have the resources or the protection. However, she handed Jared a flash drive. This contains everything I've gathered. Patient testimonials, financial records showing suspicious billing patterns, surgical reports with my annotations. It's not enough for criminal charges yet, but combined with what he's doing to you, it becomes a pattern, Jared finished. A conspiracy. Exactly. But Mr. Pena, you need to be careful. Alfonso is vindictive. If he realizes you're investigating him, he'll accelerate whatever he and your wife are planning. You'll go from target to victim very quickly. I can handle Alfonso Monroe. Linda studied him for a long moment. You're military, aren't you? Marines. 12 years. Then you understand tactics, strategy. Good. You'll need them. Alfonso doesn't fight fair, and he's used to winning. She stood to leave, then paused. One more thing. 3 weeks ago, I overheard Alfonso on the phone in the doctor's lounge. He was talking to someone about the final stage and making sure the husband is out of the picture permanently. I think they're planning something soon. Whatever you're going to do, you need to do it fast. Chapter 3. The Trap Within the Trap. Jared spent the next week analyzing every piece of evidence, every pattern, every vulnerability in Alfonso and Gina's plan. The picture that emerged was chilling in its calculated cruelty. The endgame, as best Jared could determine, was straightforward. Gina would provoke a confrontation, probably by staging one final, severe attack. Alfonso would document it, call the police, and paint Jared as a dangerous, unstable veteran, a narrative that played into existing prejudices about PTSD and military violence. Jared would be arrested, possibly institutionalized. Gina would get emergency custody of Emma, a restraining order, and control of all marital assets. Once the divorce was finalized and the dust settled, Alfonso would help himself to Gina's newfound wealth and disappear, leaving her as broken as his previous victims. Elegant, vicious, and almost foolproof. But Jared had no intention of playing his assigned role. On a Tuesday evening, Gina came home from another doctor's appointment, with fresh bruises on her arms. Carefully placed, the kind that would photograph well, but weren't severe enough to require legitimate medical attention. I'm so clumsy, she said, showing Jared. I tripped going up the stairs at Dr. Monroe's office. He said I should be more careful. Maybe you should see a neurologist, Jared suggested, his voice full of concern. All these falls and dizzy spells. It could be something serious. Gina's eyes flickered, annoyance quickly masked. Alfonso already ran tests. He says it's just stress. Still, a second opinion. I trust Alfonso. Her voice rose sharply. Then she caught herself, softening. I mean, Dr. Monroe has been so helpful. I don't want to offend him by going to someone else. There it was, the crack in her facade. Gina was getting nervous, probably because Alfonso was pushing her to move faster. The bruises were escalating, the narrative building toward its conclusion. Jared played his part perfectly. Okay, honey, whatever makes you comfortable. I just worry about you. I know you do. Gina kissed his cheek, and for a moment, Jared saw something in her eyes. Maybe regret, maybe doubt. Then it was gone, replaced by calculated affection. That night, after Gina took her pills and fell into her usual drugged sleep, Jared made his move. He'd been waiting for this moment, when her guard was down, to search her private spaces. In the back of her closet, hidden in a shoebox, he found a burner phone. The messages told the whole story. Alfonso, it needs to happen this weekend. I've got the psychiatric evaluation ready. Just one more incident, something severe. Then we call the cops, and it's done. Gina, I'm scared. What if he fights back? Alfonso, he won't. He's too controlled, too worried about his precious image. He'll take the arrest quietly, try to prove his innocence through proper channels. By the time he realizes what's happening, it'll be too late. Trust me, baby. Soon you'll be free, rich, and we'll be together. Gina and Emma? Alfonso. Full custody, obviously. We can always send her to boarding school if she's a problem. Jared's hands shook with rage as he photographed every message. Emma. They were discussing his daughter like she was an inconvenience, a problem to be managed. He'd been planning to expose them, to ruin them legally and professionally. But this threat to Emma, changed everything. This made it personal in a way that transcended law and morality. Jared put the phone back exactly as he'd found it and returned to his office. He pulled up his notebook and began revising his plan. Legal destruction wasn't enough. Career ruin wasn't enough. Alfonso Monroe and Gina needed to face consequences that matched their crimes, not just against him, but against everyone they'd hurt. He made a series of calls, to Sergio, to Dr. Fitzgerald, to a few other contacts from his military days whose skills existed in gray areas. People who understood that sometimes justice required methods the courts couldn't acknowledge. You sure about this? Sergio asked during their last call. Once you start down this road, there's no coming back. They threatened Emma, Jared said simply. Say no more. I'm in. The plan Jared crafted over the next 72 hours was complex, multifaceted, and brutal. It would require perfect timing, absolute precision, and a willingness to operate outside the law. But it would accomplish something the courts never could. It would ensure Alfonso Monroe and Gina could never hurt anyone again. Step 1. Let them make their move. Friday evening, Gina was tense, distracted. She kept checking her phone, glancing at Jared nervously. Alfonso had probably told her tonight was the night. Jared had been tracking Alfonso's location. The doctor was at his condo, waiting. Emma was at Sophie's house for a sleepover. Dr. Fitzgerald had suggested it, understanding without being told that something was about to happen. Emma was safe. That was all that mattered. At 9 p.m., Gina poured Jared a glass of wine, something she rarely did. I thought we could talk, she said, her voice strained. About us. About our marriage. Jared took the glass, pretending to drink, but not actually swallowing. He'd expected this, probably drugged with something to make him disoriented, easier to control when they staged the final attack. What about it? He asked, setting the glass down. I feel like we've been distant lately. Like you're angry with me. Why would I be angry? I don't know. Gina twisted her hands. Maybe I'm imagining it. Maybe it's my anxiety. Alfonso thinks I might need medication. Alfonso thinks a lot of things about you, doesn't he? Jared's tone was mild, curious, but Gina froze. What do you mean? Just that he's very invested in your well-being. More than most doctors would be with a patient. Gina's face went pale. Jared, how long have you been sleeping with him, Gina? The question hung in the air between them, sharp as a blade. Gina's mouth opened and closed, shock and panic warring on her face. This wasn't how it was supposed to go. She was supposed to provoke him, to make him angry, to create the confrontation they could document and weaponize. Instead, Jared sat calmly, watching her with the cold assessment of a sniper lining up a shot. I don't know what you're talking about, Gina finally managed. Don't you? Jared pulled out his phone, not his regular one, but a secure device Gina didn't know about. He showed her photographs, her car at the Belmont Hotel, Alfonso entering the same hotel, timestamps showing the overlap. You've been meeting him 3 times a week for the past 2 months. Before that, it was once a week for 6 months. Gina's eyes widened. You've been following me? No. I've been protecting my family. Jared stood, and Gina instinctively stepped back. I know about the fake injuries. I know about the medical reports. I know Alfonso's been helping you build a domestic violence case against me. I know about the offshore account, the LLC, the money you've been funneling away. I know everything, Gina. You're crazy, Gina whispered, but her voice lacked conviction. Am I? Is that the story you're going with? Jared smiled, and it wasn't kind. Here's what's going to happen tonight. You were supposed to stage some kind of attack, weren't you? Something severe. Alfonso probably gave you pills to put in my wine. He gestured at the untouched glass. To make me groggy, easier to manipulate. Then you'd hurt yourself, call the cops, and I'd be arrested as a violent, unstable veteran. Alfonso would document everything, providing medical evidence of abuse. I'd lose Emma, lose my assets, probably lose my freedom. And then Alfonso would take everything you'd accumulated and leave you just like he left his other victims. Gina's face had gone from pale to ashen. Other victims? You think you're the first? Alfonso Monroe has done this 3 times before. You're just the latest in a pattern. And when he's drained you dry, he'll move on to the next vulnerable woman who thinks he's her savior. No, Gina shook her head. No, Alfonso loves me. He said what you needed to hear. Just like I assume he's been saying for months. Jared's voice was almost gentle now, watching his wife's world collapse around her. You've been played, Gina. Used. And you were so eager to believe someone cared that you didn't see it. Gina slumped onto the couch, her hands shaking. What are you going to do? That depends, Jared said, on what you do next. You have a choice, Gina. You can keep playing Alfonso's game, in which case I'll release everything I have to the police, the medical board, the media. You'll go to jail for conspiracy and fraud. Emma will know what you tried to do. Or what? Gina looked up, desperate hope in her eyes. Or you help me destroy Alfonso Monroe. Completely. Utterly. In a way he can never recover from. Gina stared at him, and Jared could see the calculation in her eyes. She was trapped. She knew it, and now she was weighing her options. Could she trust Jared? Could she trust Alfonso, who offered her the better chance of survival? If I help you, she said slowly, what happens to me? That depends on how convincing you are, Jared replied. And how far you're willing to go to make this right. Gina looked at the wine glass, at the phone in Jared's hand, at the life she'd tried to build crashing down around her. Finally, she nodded. Tell me what to do. Chapter 4. The Perfect Weapon. The transformation of Gina from adversary to asset took less time than Jared expected. Fear was a powerful motivator, and once she understood the depth of Alfonso's deception, the other women, the pattern of financial exploitation, the evidence Jared had compiled, her fury became useful. He really was going to leave me? She asked, staring at the documentation Sergio had gathered. They were in Jared's office, the door locked, Emma still safely at Sophie's house. The moment you served me with divorce papers and got control of our assets, he'd have found a way to access your accounts. Probably would have convinced you to invest in some business venture that didn't exist, or helped you hide money from the courts, except he'd be hiding it in his own pockets. Jared watched her carefully. You weren't his partner, Gina. You were his mark. Gina's hands clenched. I really thought he cared about me. That someone finally saw me, understood me. Her voice broke. Jared felt a flicker of something. Not quite sympathy, but recognition. He'd married Gina because he'd loved her once. That version of her, the woman before whatever darkness had led her to this point, was still in there somewhere. Why did you do it? He asked quietly. Why try to destroy me? Gina was silent for a long moment, tears running down her face. I felt invisible. You were always so perfect, so controlled, so strong. I felt like I was drowning in your shadow. And then Alfonso made me feel seen, important. He said you were holding me back, that I deserved better, that I could have everything I wanted if I was just brave enough to take it. She looked up at Jared with red-rimmed eyes. I know that's not an excuse. I know what I did was unforgivable. But I need you to understand, I wasn't trying to hurt you. I was trying to save myself. By framing me for abuse. By trying to take my daughter away. I know. Gina's voice was hollow. I know it was wrong. I was so deep in it by the time I realized. And Alfonso kept pushing, kept saying it was the only way, that you'd ruin me if I backed out. I felt trapped. Jared processed this. Gina was a victim and a perpetrator, a woman who'd made terrible choices, but had also been manipulated by someone far more calculating. It didn't excuse her actions, but it complicated his revenge. He couldn't destroy her completely, Not just because she was Emma's mother, but because somewhere under the betrayal and lies, there was still a human being who'd made mistakes. But Alfonso Monroe? He was different. He was a predator who'd refined his methods over years, who'd hurt multiple women and would continue doing so unless stopped permanently. "Here's what's going to happen," Jared said, his voice firm. "You're going to help me take Alfonso down. Not just expose him, destroy him. End his career, his freedom, his ability to ever hurt anyone again. You're going to wear a wire, gather evidence, get him to confess to everything. And when it's over, you're going to face consequences for what you've done, but on my terms, not his." What does that mean? It means you'll cooperate fully with authorities. You'll testify against Alfonso. You'll accept whatever legal consequences come from the fraud and conspiracy charges. But I'll speak on your behalf, explain the manipulation, advocate for leniency. You'll probably get probation, therapy, community service. You won't go to prison if you do exactly what I say. And Emma? Emma is my daughter, and she stays with me. But I won't poison her against you. If you prove you can change, if you get help, you can have supervised visits. Eventually, maybe more. But you have to earn it, Gina. Every single day. Gina nodded slowly. And if I don't help you? Then I release everything to the police tonight. You and Alfonso both go to prison. Emma learns the truth about what you tried to do. You lose everything, including your daughter's love. It wasn't a choice, really. It was an ultimatum dressed as mercy. "Okay," Gina whispered. "I'll help you. Just tell me what to do." Over the next 3 days, Jared orchestrated what he privately called Operation Scalpel, a surgical strike designed to cut Alfonso Monroe out of society like the cancer he was. Gina, now wearing a sophisticated wire provided by Sergio, met with Alfonso as planned. But instead of staging the final confrontation at home, she told Alfonso they needed to move faster, that Jared was getting suspicious, that they needed to act immediately. "Come to the house tonight," she told Alfonso, her voice shaking in what he'd interpret as fear, but was actually barely controlled rage. "Jared's going to be at the gym. We can stage everything, call the police, and it'll be done. By tomorrow, he'll be in custody, and we'll be free." Alfonso agreed immediately, his greed overriding caution. That evening, while Jared was supposedly at the gym, actually parked 2 blocks away, monitoring everything through security cameras Gina hadn't known existed, Alfonso arrived at the house. The cameras captured everything. Alfonso entering with a medical bag, discussing with Gina how they'd stage the scene, what injuries would be most convincing, how they'd manipulate the evidence. "Remember," Alfonso said, his voice calm and clinical as he prepared syringes, "you need to look terrified. Traumatized. Like you barely escaped with your life. Can you do that?" "I've been doing it for months," Gina replied, and there was an edge to her voice that Alfonso missed. "Good. Because this is it, baby. After tonight, you're free. We're free. And with the settlement from the divorce, the insurance money from his veterans' benefits, we'll have more than enough to start over somewhere beautiful. Maybe Italy. You'd like Italy. What about Emma?" Gina asked. Alfonso shrugged. "Kids are resilient. She'll adjust. And if she doesn't, well, there are schools for troubled children. We can. You son of a bitch." Alfonso froze at the venom in Gina's voice. "What?" "Jared told me about the others. The women you did this to before. How you used them and left them broken." Gina stood, and Alfonso suddenly realized something was wrong. "He told me about Jessica in Nevada, about Janine in California, about how you're not planning to stay with me at all, how you're going to take the money and run." Alfonso's expression hardened. "Gina, whatever Jared told you is true. All of it. I checked. You're a liar and a predator, and I'm done being your victim." "You're done?" Alfonso laughed, but it was strained. "Gina, honey, we're in this together. You can't back out now. If you try to confess, I'll make sure you go to prison. I have all the documentation, all the proof that you—" "Proof that we fabricated together," Gina interrupted. She pulled out her phone, showing him the recording app that had been running the entire conversation. "Proof that you just confessed to on camera." Alfonso's face went pale, then red with fury. "You stupid!" He lunged toward her, and that's when Jared emerged from the garage, where he'd been listening to everything. "Don't even think about it, Monroe." Alfonso spun, and for the first time, real fear crossed his face. Jared wasn't the mild-mannered husband anymore. He was a Marine, a combat veteran, and in that moment, Alfonso saw exactly what he'd tried to destroy. A trained warrior who'd been holding back only through choice, not inability. Jared, Alfonso said, raising his hands, trying to salvage the situation. Let's talk about this. I can explain. Explain what? How you've been manipulating my wife. Faking medical records? Conspiring to have me arrested on false charges? Jared's voice was cold, controlled fury. Or maybe you want to explain the other women you victimized. Because I've found 3 of them, Alfonso, and they're very eager to talk to investigators. Alfonso's eyes darted to the door, calculating escape routes. You have no proof. Nothing that would hold up in court. No. Jared pulled out his phone, showing Alfonso the live feed from the hidden cameras. I have you on video discussing how to fake evidence, confessing to conspiracy, threatening Emma. I have bank records showing financial fraud. I have testimony from Dr. Fitzgerald about your pattern of malpractice. I have statements from your previous victims. I have enough proof to bury you, Alfonso. You're bluffing. But Alfonso's voice wavered. Am I? Jared stepped closer, and Alfonso stepped back. Let me tell you how this is going to play out. In about 10 minutes, the police are going to arrive. Not the ones you have in your pocket. I went to the state police, the FBI. They're very interested in medical fraud, conspiracy, and a pattern of targeting vulnerable women. You're going to be arrested tonight, Alfonso. Your medical license will be suspended by tomorrow. And by the end of the week, every news outlet in the state is going to know exactly what kind of monster you are. Alfonso's facade finally cracked. You can't do this. I have connections. I have lawyers. You have nothing, Jared said flatly, except a very long prison sentence ahead of you. And here's the beautiful part, Alfonso. The women you hurt? They're coming forward now. All of them. Because they're not afraid of you anymore. I made sure of that. Outside, sirens began to wail, growing closer. Alfonso looked around wildly, trapped, his perfect plan collapsing. He'd been so certain he was smarter, more careful, untouchable. He'd never considered he might be hunting someone more dangerous than himself. Chapter 5. The Walls Close In. The arrest of Dr. Alfonso Monroe made regional headlines within 24 hours. Local news stations ran stories about the Doctor of Deception, detailing allegations of medical fraud, conspiracy, and exploitation of vulnerable women. But Jared had carefully controlled the narrative, working with Sergio and several investigative journalists Sergio knew, to ensure the story emphasized Alfonso's pattern of predation while protecting Gina as a victim rather than co-conspirator. It was a calculated move. Gina was cooperating fully, and destroying her publicly would hurt Emma. Better to position her as another of Alfonso's victims who'd been manipulated into participating in his schemes. But privately, Jared was nowhere near done with Alfonso Monroe. The criminal charges, fraud, conspiracy, practicing medicine unethically, would likely result in a prison sentence, but the legal system moved slowly. Alfonso had expensive lawyers, connections, and the arrogance to believe he could still maneuver his way out. Jared needed to ensure that even if Alfonso avoided prison through some technicality, he'd face consequences that were permanent and devastating. He needed to destroy Alfonso's life as thoroughly as Alfonso had tried to destroy his. You're sure about this? Sergio asked during one of their late-night strategy sessions in Jared's office. We've got him cold on the criminal charges. Why risk? Because jail isn't enough, Jared interrupted. Alfonso will hire lawyers, plea down, maybe serve 5 years. Then he'll be out, still dangerous, still capable of hurting people. I need to make sure he can never practice medicine again, never have credibility, never be able to manipulate his way into another woman's life. Professional destruction, Sergio nodded. I get it. What's the plan? Jared pulled up files on his computer, documentation he'd been compiling with help from Dr. Fitzgerald. Alfonso's malpractice. Linda found 17 cases over the past 5 years where patients had unusual complications after procedures Alfonso performed. Infections, nerve damage, botched surgeries that required expensive corrections, all while Alfonso maintained plausible deniability. Proving intentional harm will be tough. Not if we have expert testimony from multiple physicians reviewing his surgical techniques. Linda's been coordinating with colleagues who specialize in medical forensics. They've found patterns, Alfonso deliberately compromising procedures in ways that aren't immediately obvious but cause long-term problems. And here's the key. The patients he targeted were all wealthy. all insured, all vulnerable in some way. Single women, recent divorcees, people going through life transitions. So we file civil suits on behalf of the victims? Already in motion. Linda connected me with 3 former patients willing to sue. Once their cases go public, others will come forward. Alfonso will be buried in lawsuits, his reputation destroyed, his assets seized to pay settlements. Even if he beats the criminal charges somehow, he'll be bankrupt and unemployable. Sergio whistled low. That's thorough. I'm not done. Jared pulled up another file. Alfonso's medical license requires him to maintain malpractice insurance. With multiple lawsuits and criminal charges, his insurance company will drop him. Without insurance, he can't practice medicine legally, even if he keeps his license. And with the medical board investigation Linda triggered, his license will be suspended pending review. That process takes years. By the time it's resolved, he'll be too old, too notorious, too broke to rebuild. You're not just destroying his career. You're dismantling his entire future. He threatened my daughter, Jared said quietly. He planned to send Emma to boarding school because she was an inconvenience. He's hurt multiple women and would have kept doing it. This isn't revenge, Sergio. This is quarantine. I'm removing a cancer from society. Sergio studied his friend for a long moment. You know there's a line somewhere, right? Between justice and what? Becoming like him. Jared shook his head. I'm nothing like Alfonso Monroe. I'm not doing this for money or ego or control. I'm doing it to protect people. If the legal system could guarantee he'd never hurt anyone again, I'd step back and let it work. But we both know it can't. Just be careful, brother. Sometimes when you hunt monsters, you risk becoming one yourself. I'll be careful, Jared promised. But I won't be merciful. Over the next 2 weeks, Jared's plan unfolded with military precision. The first civil lawsuit was filed by Janine Weber, a former patient of Alfonso's who developed severe complications after what should have been a routine cosmetic procedure. Her lawyer, provided and paid for by Jared through a shell company, presented medical evidence reviewed by 3 independent experts, all concluding Alfonso had deviated from standard surgical protocols in ways that appeared deliberate. The media coverage was devastating. News stations interviewed Janine, a sympathetic victim whose life had been upended by Alfonso's negligence. Within days, 2 more former patients came forward with similar stories. Alfonso's lawyers tried to claim the lawsuits were coordinated, a conspiracy to frame their client. But the medical evidence was overwhelming, and the sheer number of victims, now approaching 8, suggested a pattern even his expensive legal team couldn't explain away. Meanwhile, the medical board investigation intensified. Dr. Linda Fitzgerald, no longer afraid to come forward, testified about the suspicious patient outcomes she'd documented, the falsified records, the financial irregularities. Other physicians at County General, seeing the writing on the wall and wanting to distance themselves from the scandal, began sharing their own concerns about Alfonso's practices. The hospital administration, facing potential liability for allowing Alfonso to operate with such impunity, suspended his privileges and launched their own internal investigation. Within a week, they'd announced Alfonso was no longer affiliated with County General and implied they'd been investigating him independently. A lie, but one that protected the hospital while further damaging Alfonso's reputation. Jared watched it all unfold with satisfaction. Alfonso's world was collapsing in concentric circles: criminal charges, civil suits, professional sanctions, public disgrace. Each day brought new revelations, new victims, new evidence of systematic predation. But Alfonso still had one card to play: Gina. During a bail hearing, Alfonso had been released on bond pending trial. His lawyer made a desperate move. "Your Honor, my client maintains his innocence. He alleges that the primary witness against him, Mrs. Gina Pena, is not a credible source. She participated willingly in all alleged activities and is only cooperating with authorities to save herself from prosecution. Furthermore, we have evidence suggesting Mr. Jared Pena, Mrs. Pena's husband, has orchestrated a coordinated campaign to destroy Dr. Monroe's reputation and career, using his wife's testimony as a weapon." The accusation wasn't entirely wrong, which made it dangerous. If Alfonso's lawyers could paint Jared as the real villain, a vengeful husband manipulating the system, it might create enough reasonable doubt to help Alfonso avoid conviction. Jared had anticipated this. He'd prepared for it. But he hadn't expected Alfonso to be quite so desperate, quite so willing to burn everything down. After the hearing, Jared received a message on his secure phone. It was from a number he didn't recognize. Back off, or everyone learns the truth about your perfect victim wife. She's not innocent. She wanted this as much as I did. I have proof. A.M. Alfonso was threatening to expose Gina's full complicity, to reveal that she hadn't just been manipulated but had actively participated in the conspiracy. It would hurt Gina, hurt Emma by association, and potentially undermine the entire case. Jared showed the message to Sergio. He's cornered. Dangerous. What are you going to do? Jared thought for a moment, then smiled. A cold, calculated expression. I'm going to give him exactly what he wants. I'm going to let him think he's winning. That sounds like a terrible idea. It's a perfect idea, Jared corrected. Alfonso's playing the game he knows. Manipulation, blackmail, controlling the narrative. He thinks if he threatens Gina, I'll back off to protect my family. What he doesn't understand is that I've already protected my family. Gina's testimony is just one piece of evidence. I have so much more that even if she recants everything, Alfonso still goes down. So this is what? A feint. It's giving him enough rope to hang himself. Watch. Jared responded to Alfonso's message. We need to talk. In person. Just you and me. The response came quickly. Tomorrow. Industrial District, Old Porter Warehouse. 8 p.m. Come alone. It was exactly the kind of dramatic, ill-advised meeting that proved Alfonso's desperation. He was thinking like a criminal now, not a doctor. And criminals made mistakes. You're not seriously going, Sergio said. Of course I am. But I won't be alone. Jared pulled up a map, marking locations. You'll be here, and here with cameras and recording equipment. We're going to document everything Alfonso says. If he threatens me, tries to blackmail me, attempts violence, anything, it's more evidence. And if he's stupid enough to confess to crimes thinking he's got leverage, even better. And if he's actually planning to kill you? Jared met Sergio's eyes. Then he'll learn that threatening a Marine who survived 3 combat tours is the last mistake he'll ever make. Chapter 6. The Turning Point. The old Porter warehouse sat in the decaying industrial district, abandoned for years, surrounded by rusted equipment and broken windows. It was the kind of place people went when they wanted to avoid witnesses, which was precisely why Jared had chosen to accept the meeting here. Alfonso thought he was controlling the situation. In reality, he was walking into a trap. Jared arrived at 7:45 p.m., dressed in dark clothes, with a concealed recording device and a tactical knife hidden at his waist, not because he planned violence, but because he'd learned in the military to always be prepared. Sergio and 2 other former Marines were positioned at 3 different vantage points with cameras, night vision equipment, and clear lines of sight to the warehouse interior. If Alfonso tried anything, he'd be on camera from multiple angles. At 8 p.m. exactly, Alfonso's Mercedes pulled into the lot. The doctor stepped out, looking around nervously before entering the warehouse through a side door. Jared waited 2 minutes, then followed. The interior was dark, illuminated only by streetlights filtering through broken windows. Alfonso stood in the center of the open floor space, and when he saw Jared, his expression was hard, angry, none of the smooth charm he'd shown before. You destroyed everything, Alfonso said without preamble. My career, my reputation, my life. All because you couldn't accept that Gina wanted something better. Better. Jared's voice echoed in the empty space. You were using her, Alfonso. Planning to rob her blind and leave her just like you did the others. That's what she told you. Alfonso laughed bitterly. Gina came to me. She pursued me. She wanted out of her boring marriage with her boring husband, and she was willing to do whatever it took. I just gave her the tools. You manipulated a vulnerable woman. I gave her what she asked for. And you know what the funny part is, Jared? She loved it. Planning your destruction, playing the victim, setting you up. She was good at it. Better than the others. She actually enjoyed watching you trust her while she plotted against you. Jared kept his expression neutral, letting Alfonso talk. Every word was being recorded, every admission of conspiracy adding to the evidence against him. So why the desperate meeting, Alfonso? What do you want? I want you to back off. Drop the lawsuits. Stop coordinating with the victims. Let the criminal case fall apart. Because if you don't, Alfonso pulled out his phone, showing Jared a video file. I released this. All the recordings I made of Gina enthusiastically participating in our plans. Her laughing about how easy it was to fool you. Her suggesting ways to hurt you more. You think she's some innocent victim I manipulated? Watch this and tell me she's not complicit. Jared looked at the phone, seeing Gina's face on the screen, younger, happier, clearly enjoying her affair and the deception. It stung, even now, even knowing what she'd become. But it didn't change his plan. So that's your play? Mutual destruction. If I'm going down, everyone goes down with me. Gina faces the full consequences of conspiracy. You get exposed as a manipulative husband who drove his wife to desperate measures. Emma learns her mother is a liar and her father is a bully. Nobody wins. Unless I back off and let you get away with everything you've done. Smart man. Alfonso smiled. See, you and I aren't so different, Jared. We both do what we need to survive. You did it in the military. I do it in my profession. Sometimes people get hurt. That's life. No, Jared said quietly. We're nothing alike. I fought to protect people. You prey on them. Semantics. Alfonso waved dismissively. The point is, you have 24 hours to decide. Either you back off, or I destroy what's left of your family. And if I don't back off, you go to prison anyway. Those videos don't change the criminal case against you. They don't erase the medical fraud, the falsified records, the other victims who have nothing to do with Gina. Alfonso's smile faltered. But they hurt you. And I think that matters to you more than you're admitting. You think I care about being embarrassed? About people knowing my wife betrayed me? Jared stepped closer, and Alfonso unconsciously stepped back. I care about one thing, protecting my daughter. And you threatened her. That's why you're going to lose, Alfonso. Not because I'm smarter or stronger, but because I'm willing to sacrifice everything to keep her safe. Can you say the same about anything? Alfonso's face hardened. You're making a mistake. No, you made the mistake when you involved Emma. Jared pulled out his own phone, showing Alfonso a live feed. See those cameras? The ones recording this entire conversation? Every threat you just made, every admission of blackmail, every word about conspiring with Gina, it's all documented. And it's all being streamed to multiple locations, including the FBI field office. Alfonso's face went white. You son of a... I told you we're not alike. I don't bluff. I don't manipulate. I plan, I execute, and I win. Jared turned to leave, then paused. Oh, and Alfonso? Those videos you threatened to release. Dr. Fitzgerald already found them. They were submitted to the court as evidence of your pattern of documenting your crimes. The prosecution is using them to show premeditation and conspiracy. You just proved you kept evidence of your illegal activities because you thought it gave you power. Instead, it's going to send you to prison. Jared walked toward the exit, leaving Alfonso standing alone in the dark warehouse, his last leverage worthless, his final threat neutralized. Behind him, Alfonso's scream of frustrated rage echoed off the concrete walls. 2 days later, Alfonso Monroe's bail was revoked based on the warehouse recording showing him attempting to blackmail and threaten a witness. He was remanded to custody pending trial, and his legal team began negotiating a plea deal, the first admission that they knew they couldn't win in court. The civil lawsuits multiplied. By the end of the week, 12 former patients had filed suit against Alfonso, with more coming forward daily. His malpractice insurance company denied coverage, citing intentional misconduct exclusions. His personal assets, the Mercedes, the condo, the investment accounts, were frozen pending settlement of the civil claims. The medical board suspended his license indefinitely, pending a full investigation that would take years even if he wanted to fight it. County General Hospital faced its own lawsuits from victims and launched a public relations campaign distancing itself from Alfonso, painting him as a rogue operator they'd been investigating secretly. Alfonso Monroe's life, as he'd known it, was over. But Jared wasn't finished. Through Sergio's contacts, Jared had reached out to the 3 previous victims Alfonso had destroyed in other states. He'd paid for their travel, their accommodations, and their therapy. He'd connected them with lawyers who would work pro bono to pursue justice. He'd given them something Alfonso had taken away, hope that they could reclaim their lives. Jessica, from Nevada, sent Jared a message. Thank you. For 5 years I thought I was crazy, that it was my fault. You gave me back my truth. I'm testifying against him, and I'm not afraid anymore. That more than any legal victory, felt like justice. But there was still Gina to deal with. His wife, soon-to-be ex-wife, was living in a temporary apartment, attending therapy twice a week as part of her cooperation agreement with prosecutors. Emma was staying with Jared, visiting Gina for supervised sessions that were, by all accounts, awkward but not hostile. One evening, Jared agreed to meet Gina at a neutral location, a coffee shop where they could talk privately but publicly. She looked different, smaller, somehow. The careful makeup and designer clothes were gone, replaced by simple jeans and minimal cosmetics. She looked like the woman he'd married 10 years ago, before everything had gone wrong. "Thank you for meeting me," Gina said quietly as Jared sat down. "We need to discuss custody arrangements. And the divorce." "I know." Gina wrapped her hands around her coffee cup like she needed the warmth. "Jared, I don't expect forgiveness. I don't deserve it. What I did was unforgivable. But I need you to understand something." "What's that?" "I was so lost. After Emma was born, I had postpartum depression that I never treated. I felt invisible in my own life. And when Alfonso paid attention to me, made me feel important, I convinced myself I was special to him, that what we had was real." She looked up with tears in her eyes. "I know now that he was using me. But at the time, I genuinely believed I was fighting for my happiness. I told myself you were holding me back, that I deserved better. I was wrong. About everything." Jared listened, his expression neutral. He'd heard this before, the therapy speak, the explanations. But Gina seemed genuinely broken, genuinely remorseful. "What do you want, Gina?" "I want to be a mother to Emma. Not full custody. I know I don't deserve that. But I want her to know I love her, that I'm working to be better. I'm in therapy. I'm taking medication for depression. I'm working on understanding why I made such horrible choices. I want a chance to earn back some small part of her trust." "Emma is seeing a child psychologist," Jared said. "Dr. Fitzgerald recommended someone. Emma's been told age-appropriate versions of what happened, that you made mistakes, that you were manipulated, that you're working to get better. She doesn't know the full extent of the conspiracy, and she won't until she's old enough to process it." "What does she think of me?" "She's confused. Hurt. But she doesn't hate you, if that's what you're asking. She's a forgiving kid. More forgiving than I am." Gina nodded, accepting this. "I'll take whatever you're willing to give. Whatever relationship I can have with her, I'll be grateful for." "Here are my terms," Jared said, pulling out a document. "Supervised visitation every other weekend to start. After 6 months, if you're compliant with therapy and your probation terms, we'll discuss expanding it. You'll have no financial claim to my assets. Everything goes to Emma's trust fund except what you need for basic living expenses, which I'll provide. You'll participate in the prosecution of Alfonso Monroe, testifying fully and honestly. You'll agree to all of this in the divorce settlement, and if you violate any term, you lose all visitation rights permanently." It was harsh, but fair. Gina had conspired to destroy him, and only her cooperation had saved her from prison. She had no leverage, no right to negotiate. "I agree," Gina said immediately. "All of it. I just want a chance to know my daughter, even if it's limited. Even if it takes years." Jared studied her for a long moment. "I believe you. But trust is earned, Gina. And you destroyed every bit of trust we ever had. It's going to take a long time to build even a fraction of it back." "I understand." "And Jared." She reached across the table but didn't touch him. "I am sorry. Truly. I know sorry doesn't fix anything, but I need you to hear it. You were a good husband, a great father, and I destroyed our family because of my own brokenness. That's on me, not you." "Yeah," Jared said quietly. "It is." Chapter 7. The First Blood. The trial of Dr. Alfonso Monroe began 3 months later in a downtown courthouse packed with media, victims, and observers drawn by the scandal. The prosecution's case was overwhelming. Testimony from 12 victims, expert witnesses documenting Alfonso's pattern of malpractice, financial records showing fraudulent billing, and most damning of all, the recordings of Alfonso himself confessing to conspiracy and blackmail. Jared attended every day, sitting in the gallery with a notebook, observing. He'd become something of a local figure, the husband who'd exposed a predatory doctor, the man who'd protected his family from a calculated conspiracy. Media outlets requested interviews, but he refused them all. This wasn't about fame or attention. It was about justice. On the third day of trial, Gina took the stand. She'd been dreading this moment, Jared knew. Testifying meant publicly admitting her role in the conspiracy, her affair with Alfonso, her willingness to frame her husband for abuse. It meant humiliation and shame broadcast to the world. But she'd agreed to do it as part of her cooperation agreement. And as Jared watched her walk to the witness stand, he saw something he hadn't expected: courage. Mrs. Pena, the prosecutor began. Can you explain how you met Dr. Alfonso Monroe? Gina's voice was steady but soft. He was my doctor at County General. I'd gone to the emergency room for what I thought was a panic attack. He was kind, attentive. He made me feel seen. And when did your relationship become romantic? About 3 months after we met. He started texting me, checking on my health outside of appointments. It felt caring at first. Then it became more personal. He told me my husband didn't appreciate me, that I deserved better, that he could help me find happiness. Did Dr. Monroe suggest you leave your husband? Yes, but he said we needed to be strategic. He said if I just asked for a divorce, my husband would fight it, that I'd end up with nothing. He suggested we build a case of domestic violence so I could get full custody of our daughter and a favorable settlement. The courtroom murmured. Several jurors leaned forward, clearly interested. And did you agree to this plan? Gina's eyes filled with tears. Yes, God help me, I did. I was so caught up in the fantasy Alfonso was selling, that we'd be together, that I'd be happy, that my problems would disappear if I could just get away from my marriage. I didn't think about what I was doing to my husband, to my daughter. I only thought about myself. Can you describe how Dr. Monroe helped you fabricate evidence of abuse? Over the next hour, Gina detailed everything. The self-inflicted injuries, the falsified medical reports, the staged photographs, the plan to drug Jared and provoke a confrontation. She admitted her full complicity, never trying to paint herself as an innocent victim. When Alfonso's defense attorney cross-examined her, trying to establish that she'd been a willing participant who was now lying to save herself, Gina didn't flinch. You're right, she told the attorney. I was a willing participant. I made terrible choices. I conspired to destroy my husband's life. But that doesn't change the fact that Dr. Monroe orchestrated everything. He'd done it before with other women. I'm guilty, and I'm facing consequences for that. But so should he. It was a powerful moment. Gina had nothing to gain from her testimony. She'd already negotiated her plea deal. She was exposing herself to public shame for one reason: to ensure Alfonso Monroe faced justice. When she stepped down from the witness stand, her eyes met Jared's briefly. He gave her a small nod, not forgiveness, but acknowledgement. She'd done the right thing, finally. The trial lasted 2 weeks. The defense tried to argue that Alfonso had been deceived by Gina, that he genuinely believed she was being abused and was trying to help her. But the prosecution systematically demolished this argument with evidence of Alfonso's prior victims, his financial motivations, and most damning, his own recorded words discussing the conspiracy. The warehouse recording, in particular, was devastating. Hearing Alfonso admit to manipulating Gina, keeping recordings as leverage, and threatening to destroy Jared's family made it impossible for jurors to see him as anything but a predator. On the 14th day, after 6 hours of deliberation, the jury returned with a verdict: guilty on all counts. Alfonso Monroe was convicted of conspiracy, fraud, extortion, and practicing medicine unethically. The judge scheduled sentencing for 2 weeks later, but everyone knew Alfonso faced a substantial prison term, likely 15 to 20 years. As Alfonso was led away in handcuffs, he turned and looked at Jared one final time. There was no recognition there, no acceptance of what he'd done, only rage and disbelief that someone had beaten him at his own game. Jared held his gaze until Alfonso was forced to turn away. Then he walked out of the courthouse into the bright afternoon sun, where Sergio was waiting. It's done, Sergio said. Not yet, Jared replied. Sentencing in 2 weeks. Then the civil suits. Then the medical board finalizes his license revocation. Then it's really done, Sergio finished. Brother, you won. Alfonso's life is over. You can let it go now. Can I? Jared looked at his friend. Every day I think about what he tried to do. Not to me, I can handle that. But to Emma. He was going to send her away to boarding school, treat her like an inconvenience. My daughter. And for what? Money? Control? The thrill of manipulation. He's a sociopath. They don't need reasons that make sense to normal people. Maybe. But I need to know he can never hurt anyone again. Ever. He can't. You made sure of that. His medical license is gone. He's going to prison. His reputation is destroyed. Even after he gets out, no one will trust him with anything. You won. Completely. Jared wanted to believe that. But something nagged at him, some instinct honed in combat that warned when threats remained. Alfonso was a survivor, a manipulator. Even from prison, could he somehow reach out, hurt people, continue his patterns? No. Jared had to accept that he'd done everything possible. The justice system would handle the rest. He had to focus on rebuilding his life, helping Emma heal, and moving forward. He had to let Alfonso Monroe become a bad memory rather than an ongoing obsession. You're right, Jared said finally. It's done. Let's go home. But that night, lying in bed, Jared couldn't shake the feeling that he'd missed something. Alfonso had been too calm at sentencing, too controlled. A man facing 20 years in prison should have been devastated, broken. Instead, Alfonso had looked almost satisfied. Jared pulled out his laptop and began researching, following instincts he'd learned to trust in the military. If something felt wrong, it usually was. An hour later, he found it, a news article from Nevada, dated 3 years ago. Jessica Hurley, one of Alfonso's previous victims, had filed a restraining order against someone named Luis McMullen. The name meant nothing to Jared until he dug deeper and found that Luis McMullen was Alfonso Monroe's half-brother. Same mother, different fathers, different last names. And Luis McMullen had disappeared from Nevada the same time Jessica had stopped posting on social media, stopped responding to friends, effectively vanished from public life. Jared felt ice in his veins. Alfonso hadn't just destroyed women and moved on. He'd had help. Someone to handle the aftermath, to tie up loose ends, to ensure victims stayed silent. And if Luis McMullen was still out there, still loyal to his brother. Jared grabbed his phone and called Sergio. We have a problem. What kind of problem? The kind where Alfonso isn't the only threat. He has a brother. And I think that brother has been cleaning up Alfonso's messes for years. There was a long pause. So it's not over. No, Jared said grimly. It's not even close to over. Chapter 8, The Brother's Shadow. Luis McMullen was a ghost. No social media presence, no employment records, no permanent address that Jared could find. He'd learned from Alfonso how to stay invisible, how to operate in shadows while his brother played the respectable doctor in public view. But everyone left traces if you knew where to look. Sergio, using his intelligence contacts and methods that existed in legal gray areas, began building a profile on Luis. Former Marine, like Jared, but discharged under less than honorable circumstances, something about excessive violence during an altercation with a civilian contractor in Iraq. Luis had a history of assault charges that were always dropped or pled down to minor offenses. He'd worked as a private security contractor, a bouncer, a debt collector, jobs that required physical intimidation and moral flexibility. He's the muscle, Sergio reported during one of their meetings. Alfonso manipulates and plans. Luis handles the dirty work. And based on what I found, he's done more than just scare Alfonso's victims into silence. How much more? Sergio showed Jared police reports from 3 different states. In Nevada, Jessica Hurley filed a restraining order against Luis before she disappeared. In California, Janine Weber reported being followed by an unidentified man matching Luis's description after she threatened to sue Alfonso. And in Arizona, another woman, Krista Dixon, was hospitalized after a random home invasion where nothing was stolen, but she suffered severe injuries. Alfonso's previous victims. All 3. And now that Alfonso's in custody, awaiting sentencing, I'd bet money that Luis is planning something. Either revenge against you, or silencing witnesses, or both. Jared processed this, his mind shifting back into combat mode. He'd been so focused on destroying Alfonso legally that he'd missed the physical threat. Luis McMullen was a trained killer who'd stayed loyal to his brother for years, operating as Alfonso's enforcer while remaining invisible. And now, with Alfonso facing prison, Luis would be motivated. Maybe to free his brother, maybe to ensure certain people never testified again, maybe just to punish those who'd brought Alfonso down. We need to find him before he finds us, Jared said. Already working on it. But Jared, this guy is dangerous. Military training plus zero conscience equals serious threat. You should go to the police. And tell them what? That Alfonso has a brother who might be planning something? based on circumstantial evidence and hunches, they'll dismiss it as paranoia. No, we handle this ourselves. Like we handled Alfonso. Exactly like that. We gather evidence, document everything, and when Luis makes his move, we're ready. The first sign came 3 days later. Jared's home security system detected someone attempting to bypass the locks on his back door at 2 a.m. The person fled before the police arrived, but security camera footage showed a male figure, roughly 6 feet tall, wearing a hoodie and gloves. The next night, someone slashed the tires on Jared's truck while it was parked in his driveway. Again, caught on camera from a distance, but not clearly enough to identify. Luis was probing defenses, testing responses, learning Jared's patterns. It was what Jared would do in his position, reconnaissance before the real attack. Jared moved Emma to stay with Dr. Fitzgerald and Sophie, explaining that there were safety concerns he needed to address. Emma, now 9 years old but wise beyond her years after everything that had happened, hugged him tightly. "Are you going to be okay, Daddy?" "Always, Princess. I just need you somewhere safe while I handle some things." "Is it the bad doctor's brother?" Jared looked at his daughter in surprise. "How did you know about that?" Sophie's mom told her. "She said we should be careful, that bad people sometimes have bad families." Emma's eyes were serious. "You're going to stop him, right? Like you stopped Dr. Monroe?" "Yes, baby. I promise." After Emma was secure, Jared turned his home into a fortress. Security cameras at every angle, reinforced locks, motion sensors, and a private security team, former military friends of Sergio's, monitoring 24/7. If Luis wanted to come after him, Jared was ready. But Luis was smarter than that. The attack came where Jared was vulnerable, at work. Jared had returned to his job as a project manager at a construction company, trying to rebuild normal life. He stayed late one evening to finish paperwork, and when he walked to his truck in the empty parking lot, Luis stepped out from between two vehicles. "Jared Pena," Luis said, his voice flat, emotionless. "You destroyed my brother's life." Jared assessed the situation instantly. No witnesses, no security cameras in this section of the lot, Luis blocking the path to his truck. This was the confrontation Luis had been building toward. "Your brother destroyed his own life," Jared replied, keeping his voice calm, his posture relaxed but ready. "I just exposed what he'd been doing for years. Alfonso made mistakes, but he's family, and family doesn't abandon family." Luis moved closer, and Jared saw what he was holding, a telescoping baton, the kind used by security guards and police. Lethal in the right hands. "You don't have to do this, Luis. Whatever Alfonso told you, whatever loyalty you feel, it's not worth going to prison for assault." Luis smiled, and it was a cold, empty expression. "Who said anything about assault? I'm thinking more along the lines of self-defense. You're a dangerous veteran who attacked me when I confronted you about your treatment of my brother. I had to defend myself. Tragic that you didn't survive. You've thought this through. I learned from the best. Alfonso always said plan carefully, execute decisively, and make sure the story is in your favor." Luis raised the baton. "Nothing personal, Jared. You seem like a decent guy. But you hurt my family, so now I hurt yours. By killing me? That won't help Alfonso. He's still going to prison. But you won't be around to testify at the civil trials. Your wife won't have your support when she faces sentencing. Your daughter won't have her father. Alfonso wanted me to send a message. Actions have consequences." Luis swung the baton in a vicious arc aimed at Jared's head. But Jared had been expecting it. He'd spent 12 years training for combat, learning to read opponents, to anticipate attacks. He'd seen the micro-expression, the slight tensing of muscles that preceded Luis's move. Jared blocked the baton with his forearm, painful, but not disabling, and countered with a palm strike to Luis's throat, followed by a knee to his midsection. Luis staggered back, surprised by the swift response. "You're military," Luis wheezed. "Marines. And unlike you, I didn't get dishonorably discharged for being a violent sociopath." They circled each other in the parking lot, two trained fighters measuring each other's capabilities. Luis had size and the weapon. Jared had skill and righteous fury. Luis attacked again, this time more carefully, using the baton to keep distance. Jared dodged and weaved, looking for openings. A cut opened above his eye from a glancing blow, blood running down his face, but he ignored it. This wasn't a bar fight. This was life and death, and Jared had survived far worse in Fallujah and Kandahar. When Luis overextended on a strike, Jared moved inside his guard, grabbed Luis's wrist, and used a joint lock to force him to drop the baton. Then he swept Luis's legs, sending him crashing to the pavement. "Stay down," Jared commanded, his voice harsh. "This is over." But Luis wasn't finished. He pulled a knife from his boot, slashing upward at Jared's midsection. Jared jerked back, the blade cutting through his shirt but missing flesh, and reacted on pure instinct, a disarming technique followed by a vicious strike to Luis's knife hand. The knife clattered away. Luis tried to scramble for it, and Jared tackled him, pinning him face down on the pavement. He had Luis's arm twisted at a painful angle, his knee pressing into Luis's back. "Enough," Jared roared. "It's over. Your brother is going to prison, and if you don't stop this right now, you'll join him." Luis struggled, then went still. "Just kill me," he said, his voice muffled. "I failed Alfonso. I can't face him. I'm not going to kill you, you idiot. I'm calling the police. You're getting arrested for assault, and you're going to prison where you can't hurt anyone else." Jared pulled out his phone with his free hand, keeping Luis pinned. "And when Alfonso finds out you failed, he'll realize that I didn't just beat him. I beat his entire operation. Everything he built, everyone he relied on, it's all gone." Police sirens wailed in the distance, growing closer. Sergio must have been monitoring and called them when the confrontation started. As officers arrived and pulled Luis to his feet, cuffing him and reading his rights, Jared stood back, breathing hard, adrenaline fading. Blood from the cut above his eye dripped onto his shirt, and his forearm throbbed where he'd blocked the baton. But he was alive. And Luis McMullen, the final piece of Alfonso's conspiracy, was neutralized. Chapter 9, Phoenix Rising. The sentencing hearing for Dr. Alfonso Monroe took place 4 weeks after Luis McMullen's arrest. Alfonso now faced not only his original charges, but additional conspiracy charges related to his brother's attempted murder of Jared. The prosecution argued that Luis had been acting on Alfonso's orders, carrying out a hit ordered from jail. Phone records between Alfonso and Luis, obtained through warrant, supported this theory. Coded language, careful phrasing, but clear enough that a jury would understand. Alfonso had ordered Jared's death in retaliation for destroying his life. The judge was not sympathetic. "Dr. Monroe," she began, her voice cold and formal, "you have used your position, your education, and your skills to prey upon vulnerable women for years. You have committed fraud, conspiracy, and orchestrated violence against those who exposed your crimes. You have shown no remorse, no acknowledgement of the pain you've caused, no indication that you would stop if given the opportunity." Alfonso sat stone-faced, his expensive suit unable to hide the defeat in his posture. "Therefore, I am sentencing you to 25 years in federal prison, with no possibility of parole for 15 years. Additionally, you are ordered to pay restitution to your victims totaling $2.3 million. Your medical license is permanently revoked, and you will serve an additional 5 years for conspiracy to commit murder to be served consecutively. 30 years. Alfonso Monroe would be an old man before he saw freedom again, if he survived prison at all. Child predators and corrupt doctors were not popular inmates. As Alfonso was led away, he turned one final time to look at the gallery. His eyes found Jared's, and for a moment, the mask slipped. There was no rage now, no arrogance. Just emptiness and the slow realization that he'd lost everything. Jared held his gaze, unblinking, until Alfonso was forced to turn away. Justice wasn't always perfect, but sometimes it was enough. 6 months later, Jared sat in his backyard, watching Emma play with Sophie. The girls were laughing, chasing each other with water balloons, embodying the innocence childhood should have. Dr. Linda Fitzgerald sat next to him, sipping lemonade and smiling at the scene. "She's resilient," Linda observed. "Emma, after everything she's been through, she still finds joy." "She's stronger than I am sometimes," Jared admitted. "The therapist says she's processing everything in a healthy way, that she understands her mother made mistakes, but doesn't blame herself." "And Gina? How is their relationship?" "Better. Gina completed her probation requirements. Therapy, community service, cooperation with all investigations. The judge gave her probation instead of jail time based on her role as a manipulated victim and her full cooperation." Emma sees her every other weekend now. Supervised visits that are gradually becoming less supervised as Gina proves she's stable. That's generous of you. It's for Emma, not Gina. Emma deserves to have a mother, even if that mother made terrible choices. Gina's working hard to be better, to understand why she did what she did. I can't forgive her for what she tried to do to me, but I can acknowledge she's trying to be a better person for Emma. Linda nodded. And you? How are you doing? Jared considered the question. The physical wounds from his fight with Louise had healed, a scar above his eye, some lingering stiffness in his forearm. But the emotional wounds were more complex. I'm different, he said finally. I learned things about trust, about vigilance, about how evil can hide behind respectable facades. I won't ever be as trusting as I was before. But I also learned that I'm stronger than I thought, that I can protect what matters, and that sometimes justice requires you to fight outside the system. No regrets. About how I handled it. No. Alfonso and Luis both deserved what they got, and the legal system finally gave them appropriate consequences. The women they hurt got vindication and closure. Emma is safe. That's all that matters. You realize you're a bit of a local legend now, right? Linda smiled. The Marine who took down a corrupt doctor and his enforcer brother. People are calling you a hero. I'm not a hero. I'm a father who protected his daughter. Anyone would do the same. Not everyone would do it as effectively as you did. Linda raised her glass. To justice, however it's achieved. Jared clinked his glass against hers. To justice. Later that evening, after Sophie and Linda had gone home and Emma was in bed, Jared sat in his office, reviewing the last pieces of the Alfonso Monroe case. All the civil suits had been settled. Alfonso's assets had been liquidated to pay victims, with the remainder going into a fund managed by the court for future claims. His medical license was formally and permanently revoked. Luis was serving 15 years for attempted murder. It was over. Truly, completely over. Jared pulled out the folder Dr. Fitzgerald had given him a year ago, the one that had started everything, delivered by his 9-year-old daughter with shaking hands. He looked at the medical reports, the falsified injuries, the conspiracy that could have destroyed his life. Instead, he destroyed theirs. He burned the folder in his fireplace, watching the papers curl and blacken. Letting go of the physical evidence felt symbolic, a way of releasing the anger, the vigilance, the constant readiness for battle that had consumed him for so long. His phone buzzed with a message from Sergio, heard the news. Alfonso tried to appeal his sentence. Denied. That door is officially closed. Congratulations, brother. You won every round. Jared smiled and typed back. We won. Couldn't have done it without you. That's what brothers are for. Beer tomorrow. Always. Jared set his phone down and walked upstairs to check on Emma. She was sleeping peacefully, clutching a stuffed bear, her face relaxed and innocent. This was what he'd been fighting for. Not revenge, not justice, but this moment of peace. His daughter, safe and happy, dreaming without nightmares. He kissed her forehead gently. I love you, princess. You never have to be afraid again. I promise. Emma stirred slightly, smiled in her sleep, and settled deeper into her pillows. Jared turned off the light and went to his own room. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, rebuilding his life, continuing to co-parent with Gina, helping Emma navigate the complexities of growing up in a broken family. But those were normal problems, human problems. Not conspiracies, not threats, not battles, just life. Complicated, messy, beautiful life. And for the first time in a year, Jared slept deeply, without the hypervigilance, without the nightmares, without the constant planning for the next confrontation. He'd won, not just against Alfonso and Luis, but against the fear and betrayal that had threatened to destroy him. He'd protected his family, achieved justice, and emerged stronger. The reckoning was complete. And now, finally, he could rest. Epilogue. 2 years later. Jared stood in the parking lot of County General Hospital, watching as workers installed a new plaque next to the emergency room entrance. It read, The Jessica Hurley Center for Patient Advocacy and Protection. Dr. Linda Fitzgerald stood beside him, beaming with pride. It's perfect, she said. A center dedicated to protecting patients from medical abuse, named after one of Alfonso's victims who had the courage to come forward. Jessica deserves the recognition, Jared agreed. She went through hell and still found the strength to help others avoid the same fate. The center had been funded by the settlements from Alfonso's civil suits, combined with donations from the community and a substantial contribution from Jared himself. It would provide resources for patients to verify medical advice, report unethical treatment, and access advocates when dealing with complicated medical situations. Alfonso Monroe's legacy would be not the suffering he'd caused, but the systems built to prevent others like him from thriving. Emma asks about you, Linda mentioned. Sophie says Emma talks about becoming a doctor when she grows up, specifically, one who helps people who've been hurt by bad doctors. Jared smiled, pride swelling in his chest. She's got the heart for it, and the strength. She learned from the best. They stood in comfortable silence, watching the workers finish installing the plaque. Alfonso Monroe was serving year 3 of his 30-year sentence in a federal prison, far from the life of luxury and respect he'd once enjoyed. Luis McMullen was in a different facility, serving his 15 years. Neither would be released anytime soon, and when they were, they'd emerge into a world where they'd be forever marked as predators. Gina had completed her probation and moved to a small apartment near Jared's house. She saw Emma regularly now, unsupervised visits that were growing longer and more natural. She'd found work at a nonprofit helping women escape domestic violence. Real domestic violence, not the kind she'd faked, and was, by all accounts, genuinely working to redeem herself. You did good, Jared, Linda said quietly. You protected your family, stopped a predator, helped multiple victims find justice, and somehow managed not to lose yourself in the process. That takes a rare kind of strength. I had help, Jared reminded her. You, Sergio, Emma. I couldn't have done it alone. Maybe. But you were the one who chose to fight instead of becoming a victim. You were the one who saw through Alfonso's manipulation and responded with surgical precision. You didn't just survive, you won decisively. Jared thought about the year of planning, investigating, strategizing that had led to Alfonso's downfall. The moments of doubt, the fear that he'd fail, the constant vigilance required to stay ahead of his enemies. I'd do it again, he said finally. Every bit of it. Because the alternative, letting Alfonso win, losing Emma, becoming the villain in his story, that was unacceptable. That's what makes you dangerous, Linda observed with a slight smile. You're not a monster, but you're willing to become one if that's what protecting your family requires. Alfonso never understood that distinction. He thought you'd be easy to manipulate because you were decent. He didn't realize decent men can be the most dangerous when you threaten what they love. As they walked back to their cars, Jared's phone buzzed. It was a photo from Emma, she and Gina at the park, both smiling, both healing. The message read, Mom took me for ice cream. We talked about you. She says she's sorry for everything and that you're the best dad in the world. I agree. Love you, Daddy. See you tonight. Jared typed back, Love you too, Princess. Enjoy your time with Mom. I'll have dinner ready when you get home. He showed Linda the photo. Progress, he said simply. Miracles, Linda corrected. A year ago, would you have imagined this possible? No. But that's the thing about rock bottom. It's a solid foundation to rebuild on. Gina hit her rock bottom and decided to climb back up. I respect that, even if I can't forget what she tried to do. Forgiveness is a journey, not a destination. Wise words, doctor. I learned them from my therapist, who I started seeing after all this craziness began. You should consider it too. Therapy, I mean. What you went through, the choices you had to make, the violence you witnessed and participated in. That leaves scars. I know. I've been going for 3 months now. Good. Linda squeezed his shoulder. Take care of yourself, Jared. You've earned some peace. As he drove home, Jared reflected on the past 2 years. The pain, the betrayal, the battle to protect his family had transformed him. He was harder now, more cautious, slower to trust. But he was also more aware of his own strength, his capacity to endure and overcome. Alfonso Monroe had tried to destroy him and failed. Luis McMullen had tried to kill him and failed. Even Gina's betrayal, as painful as it was, hadn't broken him. He'd emerged from the darkness stronger, wiser, and with his most important relationship, with his daughter, intact and growing. That evening, when Emma came home and ran into his arms, chattering about her day with Gina, Jared held her tight and thought about how close he'd come to losing this moment. How Alfonso's plan, if successful, would have resulted in Emma being sent away to boarding school, viewed as an inconvenience by her mother's new partner. Instead, Emma was happy, healthy, and had two parents who, despite their flaws and failures, genuinely loved her and were working to provide stability. "Dad," Emma asked, pulling back to look at him. "Are you okay? You're squeezing really tight." "Sorry, Princess. I'm just really happy you're home." "I'm happy too. Mom says maybe next month we can have dinner together? All three of us." She says she knows it's asking a lot, but she wants us to be able to be a family again, even if it's different now. Jared hesitated, then nodded. "Yeah, we can do that. Not the same family we were, but maybe something better, more honest. I'd like that." Emma hugged him again. "I love you, Daddy. I love you too, Emma. More than anything in the world." That night, after Emma was asleep, Jared sat on his back porch with a beer, looking up at the stars. Somewhere, in a prison cell, Alfonso Monroe was living with the consequences of his choices. Somewhere else, Louise McMullen was doing the same. And in a small apartment nearby, Gina was trying to build a new life from the wreckage of her old one. Jared had given them all what they deserved. Alfonso and Louise got justice. Gina got a chance at redemption. And himself? He'd gotten his family back, his daughter safe, and proof that even when evil wears a respectable mask, it can still be defeated by someone willing to fight with intelligence, courage, and unwavering determination. The reckoning had been brutal, but necessary. And in the end, the good guy won. Not because he was stronger or smarter or luckier, but because he'd been willing to do whatever it took to protect what mattered most. Jared raised his beer toward the stars in a silent toast. To survival, to justice, to second chances, and to the strength that comes from loving someone so much that failure isn't an option. "Cheers to you, Emma," he whispered. "This was all for you." And somewhere in the house, his daughter slept peacefully, never knowing the full extent of what her father had done to keep her safe, which was exactly how Jared wanted it. This is where our story comes to an end. Share your thoughts in the comments section. Thanks for your time. If you enjoy this story, please subscribe to this channel. Click on the video you see on the screen, and I will see you there.